The Ruger Mini-14's been called everything from a junky knockoff to the most underrated rifle in America, and the truth usually depends on who you're talking to at the gun counter. Thing is, most of what people repeat about this rifle comes from half-remembered stories or outdated info, and that's exactly the noise we're cutting through today. This is Ted from Line 45, and today, we're going to break down the Ruger Mini-14, the real story on what it is, what it ain't, and why it's still one of the most talked-about rifles in America. Before we dive in, do me a solid. Smash that subscribe, tap the bell, hit all the dang buttons down there. You don't gotta, but it keeps this train rolling and lets me crank out more of this wild gun talk for y'all. Alright, enough of that, let's get back to it. Why the Mini-14 gets a bad rap. Look, the Mini-14's been catching strays for decades because folks mash it up with ARs and expect the same job out of a different tool. Ruger rolled this thing out in 1973 as a light, handy ranch rifle. Garand or M14 style rotating bolt. Short-stroke gas system. Traditional stock. Meant for coyotes, hogs, and general duty around the property, not bench rest trophies or competition race guns. A lot of the bad blood traces back to early thin-barrel guns and the rumor mill that followed. Owners would see 4 to 6 MOA groups on older pre-redesigned rifles, and the internet turned that into gospel. Then there's the mag drama. Use factory Ruger mags, and the gun usually hums. Toss in bargain aftermarket stick, mags, and suddenly, you're clearing stovepipes and blaming the rifle. Add the Garand-style safety tab inside the trigger guard, push forward to fire, pull back to safe, and yeah, if you're wearing gloves or rushing, that can crowd your trigger finger unless you train it. Here's the part most folks miss. Ruger reworked the platform in the mid-2002, 580 series and later, with heavier barrels, tighter machining, and sight tweaks. Result? Typical real-world groups tightened to about 2 to 3 MOA with decent ammo, plenty for home defense, varmints, and truck gun work. And while ARs win for modularity, the Mini's traditional profile stays low profile and, depending on your state's rules, can sidestep some feature-based restrictions when kept in a simple configuration. So before we torch the whole platform, let's kill the zombie with facts. First myth on the chopping block. The accuracy story everyone keeps repeating from 1999, like it's still true. Myth number 1. The Mini-14 has terrible accuracy. Yeah, the old ones earned that reputation, but that's only half the story. Early 180 series Minis with the skinny pencil barrels could open up as the barrel heated, and plenty of folks saw 4 to 6 MOA groups. But Ruger didn't leave it there. In 2005, they retooled the line. The 580 prefix guns got a revised gas system to calm barrel whip, and a couple of years later, a visibly heavier, tapered barrel. Net result, realistic 2-inch groups at 100 yards with decent ammo aren't unusual, which puts typical 580 series rifles in that 2 to 3 MOA minute of coyote window. Even American Rifleman, hardly a rumor mill, flagged the change years ago. Beginning with the 580 series, shooting 2 groups at 100 yards is not out of the question. That squares with what most owners see in the real world, once you get past the internet's greatest hits from the 92nd. In other words, if you're judging the modern Mini by your buddy's pre-retool ranch rifle from back when gas was $1.50, you're grading the wrong test. So what does that mean practically? It means the current Mini is accurate enough for what it was built to do: varmints, predators, farm or ranch defense, and general truck gun duty, without pretending to be a free-floated match AR. The redesign timeline is clear. Overhaul in 2005-580, prefix, with changes to reduce barrel vibration. Heavier, larger diameter barrels show up around 2007 to 2008 to tighten things further. If your sample size is one crusty pencil barrel Mini, you're not seeing the modern picture. Alright, accuracy myth sorted. Next up is the gremlin that really sinks the Mini's reputation in 2025. Myth number 2. Any mag will run just fine. Here's the number 1 headache I see with new Mini owners. They buy the rifle, then they cheap out on mags. And buddy, that's where the wheels fall off. The Mini-14 is super picky about magazines. Ruger designed that mag system tight, with just the right feed angle, and it flat out doesn't like pretenders. You run a factory Ruger mag, whether it's a 5, 10, 20, or 30, the gun hums like a sewing machine. Switch to a Pro Mag or some bargain bin knockoff, and suddenly you're fighting double feeds, stovepipes, and the kind of jams that'll make you want to chuck the rifle in the creek. This is why so many folks go online and say, "Ah, my Mini's unreliable, it jams all the time. 9 out of 10 times it ain't the rifle, it's the mag." Ruger factory mags cost more. Yeah, but that's because they work. They're heat-treated steel, solid locking lugs, and built to the same spec as the rifle itself. You're not just buying ammo storage, you're buying the heartbeat of the whole system. So if you're thinking about running a Mini, do yourself a favor. Budget for Ruger mags, period. That $20 you think you're saving with an aftermarket stick will just buy you a day of clearing malfunctions instead of shooting. The Mini doesn't play nice with counterfeits, and that's the cold truth. All right, we've killed the mag myth. Next up, let's knock down the big one. This idea that the Mini's nothing but a cheap tool. Myth number 3. It's just a poor man, AR-15. All right, this one gets under my skin every dang time I hear it. Folks see the Mini-14, chambered in 223 or 556, and they instantly go, "Oh, that's just a budget AR." Nobody. It ain't. The Mini came out in the early 72nd, designed by Ruger engineers to mimic the Garand or M14 operating system in a lighter, handier package. Short-stroke gas piston, rotating bolt, traditional stock. It's basically a scaled-down M14, not some bargain bin AR. Comparing the two is like comparing a Chevy square-body pickup to a brand-new Tacoma. They both haul, but they're built for different crowds. The AR is king when it comes to modularity. You can slap on free-float rails, red dots, lasers, suppressors, new triggers, you name it. It's a Lego set for gun guys. The Mini? It's not about tricking it out. It's about being a simple, reliable rifle you can toss behind the truck seat and not worry about. That traditional profile is also a massive perk. To the average eye, or even in states with dumb assault weapon feature bans, the Mini slides under the radar, where ARs draw heat. That makes it more than just poor man's AR. It makes it the rifle that still flies when the black rifles get grounded. So no, the Mini isn't a knockoff, it's not an AR substitute, it's its own lane. And if you judge it by AR standards, you're missing the whole dang point. Now let's hit another myth. Myth number 4. The safety is foolproof. All right, here's a detail most folks brush off, until it bites them. The Mini-14 uses that old-school Garand-style safety, a little paddle right inside the trigger guard. Push it forward and you're hot, pull it back and you're safe. Sounds simple, right? Well, in practice, it ain't all sunshine. That paddle sits real close to the trigger, and if you're running gloves or you're under stress, you can absolutely fumble that motion and bump the trigger while trying to work the safety. It's not the end of the world if you train with it, but calling it foolproof is straight-up wishful thinking. I've watched guys at the range try to disengage it fast and almost launch a round before they meant to, just because their finger rode over the bow. It's not a design flaw per se. It's the way that systems have always been since the Garand days. But it does mean you need discipline and reps. Compare that to most modern rifles and carbines that use a thumb safety or crossbolt. Your finger never goes near the trigger while you're flipping it. So yeah, the Mini's safety works, and it's reliable, but don't kid yourself into thinking it's dummy-proof. If you're running one for defense or serious work, you'd better put in the practice until that motion is second nature. Now that we've talked about the safeties, let's wrap this up with the truth behind all these myths, and what the Mini-14 really is once you cut through the gun counter gossip. So here's where we land, buddy. The Mini-14 ain't perfect, but half the trash talk you hear about it is either outdated or just plain wrong. Accuracy? The old skinny barrel rifles earned that rep, but Ruger fixed it almost 20 years ago. Modern 580 series guns are plenty tight for varmints, predators, and home defense. Reliability? 9 times out of 10, the so-called jam-o-matics were running cheap aftermarket mags instead of factory Ruger steel. The AR comparison? Forget it. The Mini isn't trying to be an AR. It's a simple Garand-style ranch rifle that just happens to chew 223 or 556. And the safety? It works, but you gotta respect it and train with it, because it ain't idiot-proof. What you're left with is a rifle that does exactly what it was built to do. Ride in the truck, guard the pasture, knock down coyotes, and give you peace of mind without looking like some scary black rifle. That low-profile classic look might not matter in free states, but in places with goofy laws, it's the difference between having a rifle or not. So next time somebody at the gun counter starts spouting off about how the Mini's junk, you'll know if they're talking facts or just repeating internet gossip from 1999. It's not a precision tack driver, and it's not a Lego AR, but as a dependable everyman's rifle, The Mini-14's still alive and kicking. And that, my friends, is the truth behind the myths.